Welcome to the Classical Commons podcast, a conversation exploring the ideas, people, and trends in classical education. I'm Rob Jackson, the founder of this platform, connecting classical school communities to talent and resources. And today we are delighted to have two guests, colleagues really, from Liberty Common, charter school in Fort Collins, Colorado. And I'm going to put them up there on the screen real quickly. I've attended their Festival of Ideas a few times now over the past several years and been delighted to see the depth and the extent of the community that surrounds classical education there in Fort Collins and specifically at Liberty Common. The two guests, Meg Salazar is the art department head at Liberty Common and has played a key leadership role in the development and really the expansion of this Festival of Ideas. She's the maternal inspiration to a 6-year-old prodigy from whom I received a hand-signed artifact on my last visit. So thank you for that, Meg. And Robert Robinson began as a history teacher, joined the administration of Liberty Common in 2018, and was then appointed principal of a high school in 2023. Proud father of two Liberty Common graduates, three Liberty Common graduates, and two future graduates. So welcome, Meg and Robert.
Thanks, Rob. Great to be here.
Well, as I mentioned, I was at your Festival of Ideas last month in October, and just watching it in full swing was really inspiring because you've been doing it now for a decade. We'd love to hear, I think our audience would love to hear, how did this thing come to pass? But before we get to that, let's just hear your stories. How did you both come to Liberty Common? Meg, can we start with your story? What drew you into the orbit of this remarkable classical school?
Sure. It's an interesting story to me. Our students drew me in, and our students and the incredible Mrs. Tracy Nichols, who is a teacher at our elementary school. She teaches art. In 2008, I graduated, got my master's from Rhode Island School of Design, and I was in their MAT program, which was rare. It's very rare, but it was content focused and pro charter school. At this art school, one of the best art schools I think I've ever encountered. And but they had this just wonderful education program, and it set very high standards for me. So as a climber, I came out to Colorado. This place is where I wanted to be. So I started looking into schools out here where I could teach. I actually started interviewing principals of public schools, and
Sorry, you were interviewing the principals.
I was interviewing the principals. I went about it kind of a backwards way because I wanted that I really believed in, and I asked them about their philosophy and what they were teaching, and I didn't even really look at who was hiring. Then I quickly found the Colorado League of Charter Schools, and they had much better offerings of schools, and I started trying to figure out what kind of schools I aligned with, and that's how I found Liberty. I attended a tour at Liberty, and they brought me into Tracy Nichols' art room, which for me was an absolute utopia. These students were kind, they were knowledgeable, they were hardworking, and they were engaged in the arts in this really intellectual way. And it just seemed, if there's a school that can build this classroom, then I need to be a part of this. But that was before they had the high school, and I wanted to teach at a high school level. So I left them with my application, and I just kept an eye on it. And the next year, they decided they were going to start a high school and expand the school. And that's when I reapplied.
This is interesting because I've often said that perhaps the calling card or that which is most attractive, whether it be to parents or in your case, a discerning teacher, is what students produce, right? And in your case, you're looking at the art, watching the students, seeing their engagement in the classroom and saying, that's the thing, like that's what I want. I love the fact that you were interviewing the heads of school. And I think that's exactly right. I think those are the kind of teachers that we want in classical schools because they are discerning and they know what they're looking for. They know what they bring to the school. So, Robert, how do you put up with such people? That's crazy.
Well, it's remarkable, just to follow up on Meg's story there, is that Tracy Nichols is still here after all this time, that she was here when Meg came in the door, and she's still here. So you find the right school that values good content and value genuine content experts, teachers, and they stick around. They want to be at an institution for that. For me, I actually happen to know the founders of this school. This is one of the oldest charter schools in the state of Colorado. It was founded way back in 1997. And at about that time, I knew Ruth Ann and Randy Everett socially. And they had me over to their house and told me a little bit about this project they were engaged in. And so it's something I sort of had in the back of my mind for a long time as I went out to Ohio State to graduate school and spend a decade out there. So eventually, when I was looking for work in 2011, I looked at my friend Ruth Ann and Randy Everett's school to see if they were hiring, and they were. The first year, they were hiring for a Latin teacher, which I applied for, knowing no Latin, but promising them that I was a really good learner. And it didn't work out in that first year. They were able to hire somebody with a doctorate in classics, and good for them. But the next year, they were hiring in American history, and I came right over. So it's a great chance to get back to my hometown and be part of a wonderful high school community that I had known about at the edge of my kind of peripheral vision for a very long time.
Yeah. It's amazing. I interviewed Randy Everett and Bob Schaefer, kind of some of the co-founders, if you will, of first Washington Core Knowledge School and then what would become Liberty Common. And to truth be told, I should have been interviewing Ruth Ann and Maureen, their wives, because those are usually the engines behind these things, right? For their children, they're going to make these things happen. And they did, and they were such stalwarts. But their story reinforces what you're saying, Robert, which is it was about the community. They were so committed to this. Families that were absolutely dedicated to bringing quality education to their neighborhood, to their community there in Fort Collins. Now, what I witnessed in the classrooms there at Liberty Common, and then in this event that we're going to talk about today, is the kind of community around the content, around ideas, around the kind of conversation, the great conversation, as we say. And so the Festival of Ideas really is something of an exemplar in that region, right up there along the Front Range on the north end, just south of Cheyenne. Tell us a little bit about how this thing began. How did the Festival of Ideas come into existence? Whose idea? How did it come into being?
Sure. So it's really the brainchild of Natalie Scarlett. She is a literature teacher here and a poetry teacher. But what I love about my dear friend Natalie is that she is a creative catalyst. She makes creative things happen. And she's really this idea, this vision person. And she had this vision back in the 2015-16 school year, looking to another local school, actually with the same founders, Ridgeview Classical, and they were hosting their Humanities Day yearly. Humanities Day was really like an open house. The teachers would give talks on the humanities, and it was for the immediate school community. She loved that kind of idea, but she wanted to expand it to have more of a full and comprehensive colloquium that celebrated all disciplines, so that her purpose was she wanted cross-disciplinary conversation, so that in the morning, maybe you attend a talk on black holes, and then you go in and you attend a talk on Flannery O'Connor, and maybe you can make some kind of creative and intellectual leaps between that and converse and build our community that way. And around this learning for leisure sort of goal and objective.
Had she encountered something like this before in another context, at another institution?
Well, I think those models of other local schools were important, and we owe a lot to our sister schools in the region, Ridgeview Classical Schools, and they had a really good model of focusing on the humanities and emphasizing the importance of what is becoming kind of a lost area and a kind of an eddy in modern academia. The humanities are being devalued, I think, and they were really holding them up as something with great value. And so it started as that internal focus on our own teachers and our own community. And I think one of the things that a charter school has the freedom to do is make their professional development about content. And so for us, this was partly an exercise in professional development. What should we do for PD? We should get together and learn from each other and know as much about other disciplines as we can so we can make good cross-curricular connections and help things come alive for our students in that way. And so we expanded that to the community as well for our parents and our students, and it serves us all pretty well in that way.
Well, I've got the website here for those who are viewing so that they can take a peek at Festival of Ideas and sort of what's involved. There's a little bit of history here, a little bit of detail, along with some videos that you've posted of other and previous keynotes. I'm really intrigued by how the germ of this idea, how it began, but also how it's evolved over now 10 years. Could you kind of walk us through how that first idea of getting together for some professional development, learning from one another, doing some interdisciplinary work has now evolved into something where you literally have hundreds from across the area and the community and even sort of the extended region? How has that happened?
Sure. So Natalie handed it over to me, I think it was in 2018. And eventually we would add the tagline of Colorado Classical Symposium to Festival Ideas and but we wouldn't do that before we started collaborating with you, Rob. And we were exposed, it was this regional classical symposium in Thales. And I was one of the privileged teachers that got to attend that and started going to the national classical symposium in Arizona, and just going to this and participating in this year after year started to open up my eyes as to what this event could be. So we started expanding our audience, including more speakers from the community, speakers from outside of the state. We wanted to also have a breakfast and lunch, so a space for our audience to share meals and inspire more conversation. And let's see, we also added over time an educator seminar and more of that professional development option along the way. So other classical and core knowledge schools have in our network, we've really brought them in, and they attend as the audience, and they also will send visiting speakers. And one thing that I'm really excited about is in getting connected to this larger classical community. I've been able to have these visiting speakers come in from universities or organizations. And it's been so incredible and so rich, building friendships with these people, incorporating them into our school. But yes, all along the way, I should also mention, we're really trying to bring this rich experience to the public, so we keep it free and open to the public always.
Mm-hmm. Robert, Meg, this is what I've heard. You've told me a little bit of this story before, but what I was impressed with here at the most recent festival was just how public it has become. And you literally had speakers as well as visitors from around the country who were showing up to your regional symposium. Robert, I'm wondering, as the head of school, does this get a little out of hand? What have you unleashed here? But how has the purpose shifted, if at all? Because you described it as professional development to begin with. Makes perfect sense. But now it's something more, it seems.
Yeah, I think that's right. It is something more, and it's grown in its scope, and it's grown in its really national caliber character. At the most recent Festival of Ideas, we had Christopher and Christine Perrin, who are just such wonderful writers and speakers and thinkers. And so to bring people like that into our community, and Meg's right that you're one of those people, Rob, who's been with us here several times. It has helped inspire the growth of this event. But to bring people of that caliber in helps our community here see themselves as part of something larger, that we're part of a big national force that appreciates and values real content and good virtue and character education within the context of a classical curriculum. And it's easy to feel like you're on an island. And then you meet people like that, and people like you or Matthew Post or David Rothman or these other national caliber people who have come in and just help you feel like you're connected to something larger, and that there is a group of people who speak that same language and have those same goals and aspirations to help students find the true, the good, and the beautiful in their curriculum and in their broader lives.
Yeah.
You know, I really appreciate that. Go ahead, Meg, please.
I'd like to echo that we just have such immense gratitude for all these great minds and mentors in the classical academic world, and they really believe in us. And I mean, yourself, Carol McNamara, Rothman, Post, Williams, Grasso, Perrins, Prather, so many more. I mean, they come to our school and they build us up. And I'm reminded of Anika Prather's keynote address back in 2022, because she told us, like Robert is saying, that classical education, it is isolating. And enlightenment itself can make you feel very alone in modern society, but especially in the landscape of public education. So when we've got these big ideals and these big goals of we want to build up our community in really unique ways, and we want to create deep human connection. It's so wonderful to have this larger community hold us up while we do that.
You know, I recently interviewed, as I mentioned, Bob Schaefer and Randy Everett, and they spoke of that isolation or that sense of being on an island, as you put it, Robert, very poignantly, in part because of what they'd experienced. And they said that hasn't necessarily gone away. There's still, there are detractors. There are those who oppose the good work that you're doing there at Liberty. And I think to myself, I wonder how an event like this, with national spokespersons and others who have come to see and really encourage you in your work at Liberty, if that redounds to the benefit of parents and maybe those beyond the community, to give some credence to the work that you've been doing for more than a quarter century. Is there something is there a spillover effect or some benefit to increasing the solidarity effectively of that community by having others from outside affirm your good work?
Yeah, I think it adds that credibility. I think that's correct. That parents see that and see, oh yeah, this is something that is not just created locally, is not just a single experiment here, but is part of something more grand. And I think for parents and students too, that if we can create events like this where we show them that, what should you be thinking of spending your leisure time on? How about listening to some beautiful music, hearing poetry recitations, learning about disciplines that you may not spend a lot of time thinking or reading about? It gives them a sense of this kind of higher ideal of leisure that I think is really helpful too, and communicates in a way that a lecture directly is saying it might not, what it is we're about here. And so the event itself sort of speaks eloquently to the purpose of the school without saying it in so many words.
That at the same time requires a lot of energy, a lot of time from the team. And so I'm wondering, is it worth the cost? I mean, Robert, you have to weigh this as an administrator. Are you feeling like there really is benefit to the community such that you can pour into this project?
Yeah, 100%. And, we've just been increasing our investment over the years, and we think of it as the best use of our professional development dollars, of our community engagement dollars. It is something that helps educate our students outside the classroom and helps them lift their eyes a little bit and see their education in a broader context. And so for us, this is the thing. It's the mission, and it's what we ought to be spending our resources on, is helping people share ideas and have intellectual awakenings and experiences in our institution.
I love it. I love it. Meg, you mentioned a couple of others who are doing things similar in Thales over there in Raleigh, North Carolina. You were in attendance at one of their first events. Of course, the symposium in Phoenix, the National Symposium in Phoenix, with which I was associated. Are there any other schools at the local level doing the kind of work you're doing? And have you had opportunity to connect, if so, and maybe even collaborate?
Sure. So Loveland Classical Schools, just down in Loveland, Colorado, they have a similar classical symposium, but it's more like that just for the school community. We try and bring some of our teachers down to attend. It's a lot smaller, what ends up happening is that, Festival of Ideas has become magnetic in the way that Liberty tends to be magnetic. And we draw in speakers from other schools, so it's really become regional in that Ascent Classical will send teachers, Ridgeview Classical will send teachers, Loveland Classical will send teachers, all to Festival of Ideas, and this has become more of a hub. And it's giving them ideas for events within their own schools as well.
Well, I mentioned this in part because, as I think you both know, part of our project at Classical Commons is to seed work like this around the country. And as I was talking with Bob and Randy a few weeks ago, I love the magnanimity, the magnanimous gesture that Liberty Commons has taken by putting out many of your materials free of charge to the general public. And I think with Festival, effectively you're offering, as you said, free of charge, a model, an exemplar that we at Classical Commons are hoping to use as an exemplar and tell other communities, you might be able to do something like this in Iowa or in Florida or in Texas. So we're going to be talking about your work and hopefully seeding other communities with similar ideas. But let's talk a little bit about the plans you might have for the future. 10 years in, you've accomplished a great deal. Where do you want to see this go in the next 2 or 3 years?
We're really happy with where the place we've achieved so far, and it's really a fine tuning. We'd like to increase our audience, but not by much. It really works as this local event, and in the classrooms, not a big conference center. It's just something really beautiful, having the sessions in classrooms. Maybe increasing attendance at the educator seminar, more partnership and attendance from other schools. But really, it's like I said, just a fine tuning.
One of the things that's changed, you asked how the event has changed over time earlier, and I think one of the things that has altered a lot is we used to have a lot more student involvement as the presenters. A good portion of our presenters would be students in the early years. And that's something that I don't know that we've intentionally decided to do away with, but they've kind of been pushed out a little bit to a certain extent by just the volume of really high quality presentations by people who are content experts in their field all over the place. And so one of the things I'd like to see in the future is considering how to increase that student involvement. In our most recent edition of the festival, they were involved leading poetry recitations, doing some musical performances and things of that nature. But I'd like to see them involved with some of the content presentations in the actual sessions as well. And so figuring out how to do that while also maximizing the opportunities available for the really rich content experts in our community and beyond is something I'd like to figure out how to balance in the future.
Saw enjoy those performances, first of all, from the students, and think that's as we said at the outset, one of the best ways to attract others to say this is what students do as the result of their education. But I love the teacher presentations from Liberty Common and elsewhere. Maybe put a scholar, a student rather, alongside of a teacher and maybe co-present, something like that. I volunteer. If you'll have me back for year 11, I'll work with one of your students, one that you propose, and we could do something on any topic that you choose. And I'd be happy to jump in there alongside them, because I think that's where it is, right? That's the next generation, and we want to encourage them in their involvement.
Well, I love that idea, Rob. We'll probably hold you to it. So thank you for that.
Count me in. So let's just pretend for a moment that you have a 6-figure gift to make Festival of Ideas something either bigger, larger, or more robust in some way. Like, it doesn't have to be about size, but what would you do with the money, Meg? Let's just say they handed you the dollars and said, go at it. What do you want to do?
Yeah, I'm really taken aback by this question, because I've never imagined that we would have, anything more than our meager budget. So I'd really have to be creative and dream big, but again, it wouldn't be in scale of the actual event. I would love to use more funding for our keynotes, but also our guest speakers, and give them lodging in hotels. Right now we do a homestay, which is is very sweet and nice for building community, but it can be challenging. I think bringing in some maybe just bigger speaker names across the country. And we would love to get a conference app, just so that ticketing and finding your way around the conference can be a lot easier. And that does cost dollars that we really could never afford right now. Oh, yeah.
Right.
That's a great question. And it, I think like money often does, it poses questions to you. What is it that you want this event to be? And so I think the clearest answer to suddenly having a big pile of money would be that we could scale the event. We could get a conference center. We could bring in even more national speakers. And so it raised the question, is that what we want? Are we trying to, say, be a copy or a competitor to, or in addition to the National Symposium in Tempe? And Meg and I were chatting, about long-term vision the other day. And, I'm not sure that is what we want necessarily, but it's an interesting question to pose. We love the immediacy of having people in our school and in our community. And so would love a little bit more money. What would do with a lot more money? Well, it would ask us to really reconsider what the event's about. And there might be some wonderful and creative ways to do that would benefit a lot more people. But, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
That's right. Well, I ask you to think about it in part because there are donors out there who may come along at some point, just as they did with your Give Me Liberty project. That's the one where, again, the materials, the kind of the playbook, if you will, the blueprint for how Liberty Common has come into existence is now available to schools across the country right off of your website. There may be ways in which the Festival of Ideas, as has been so successful in these past 10 years, could, in fact, as we said a few moments ago, give seed to other communities. And so on that note, because we at Classical Common are very committed to serving the leaders, the teachers, and even the parents in these K-12 classical schools, would you have any advice that you want to share, again, for other schools who might be thinking about developing their own local version of something like the Festival of Ideas? What ideas do you have? What advice would you give?
Sure. So I'd say first in just conceptualizing, like, is this kind of event the right sort of thing for our school? And I can just tell you, you will not be able to anticipate the goodness that will come out of these events. For example, when Brian Williams came and spoke, he taught us all the word tropological, and it's all about this word of, it means turning inward and forming a moral counsel of your soul as you read a text, so a classical text or a biblical text. So say if you read To Kill a Mockingbird, Atticus Finch becomes a part of the moral counsel of your soul. And this concept years ago reinvigorated and re-inspired our character education program. And then years later, when Anika Prather came and spoke, we had another profound moment at Festival of Ideas. We had just recently, immediately, had lost a student to cancer, and we were all grieving deeply. And she brought us this message about hope and home, the home you can find in the classics, and the kind of comfort and solace we could find in the things we had immediately in our classical education institution that were already there in the community we have. So she brought us tighter together and brought us this great gift I never could have anticipated. So I would say just the gifts you're going to get are, it's priceless. In addition to that, in terms of just the organization and getting started, just take baby steps. Start really small, use the resources you have, and then you can get things launched off the ground. And lastly, come to Festival of Ideas or email me. I'm super happy to be a resource.
I think the advice I would give is that the barrier to entry is low. Really, the concept is incredibly simple. You have great content experts on your staff. Give them a forum to share their expertise with the community. one of the things we've done in addition to the Festival of Ideas is create a series of what we call Liberty Lectures, where we'll have an evening and someone will spend 45 minutes or an hour talking about a part of their content expertise. And so start there, start with a single speaker and a single evening and move forward. But the goal is simply to allow parents and students and teachers to enjoy rich content in an environment where they can discuss it, they can share it, where they can learn things that they might not otherwise have been brought to their attention. And so really the barrier to starting something is pretty low. You just need the will and someone with some expertise in a subject that they would be willing to share. And that person's probably already in your classroom, ready to go and anxious to share what they know.
I love that, Robert. It probably doesn't hurt to have a Meg Salazar on your staff. And so be on the lookout, right? On the lookout for somebody who's got the kind of energy, the fire in the belly, and the willingness to step forward and bring something like Festival of Ideas into existence.
Yeah, and energy is right. I just appreciate that comment. And I would say that so much of what Festival of Ideas has become has been a result of Meg's singularity of focus and energy and commitment over a long period of time. She's kept it consistent, kept a clear vision, and a lot of the great speakers who we've enjoyed have come from personal contacts with her, where she chases people down all over the country. Over a whole series of Zoom calls over weeks, convinced them that coming out to Colorado is the right way to spend a fall Saturday. And so her vision and energy have been pretty critical for sure.
Kudos to you, Meg, and congratulations to you, Robert, on doing such a fine job with now 10 years of Festival of Ideas. And count me in for 11th year for 2026. I'll be there.
Very good.
Thanks to both of you for joining us today. Appreciate it so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. A pleasure.
Join us weekly for the Classical Commons podcast. We are here to give you updates on this renaissance in classical liberal arts education. Subscribe to our podcast and sign up for the newsletter, and we'll keep you posted.